two, one. Okay, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Okay, so I'm super excited to have you here. It's the first it's the first episode of the podcast on this channel, and you are the perfect guest to be first as my father. And so I'm very excited today to get into learning more about you and getting the viewers of my channel just to learn more about your journey, as I think you really have a unique journey, a unique life. And I think it would be very valuable for people to be able to learn from you. Okay, so in 2 minutes or less, can you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Um, 2 minutes or less. Yeah. So I was born in Beirut. I'm from a lot of different places originally, blood-wise, Armenian, German, Palestinian, and but grew up in Dubai when my family moved here when I was 3 years old. So most of my life up until adulthood was in Dubai. All my schooling, university in Montreal, and then back to Dubai, and then my career, which is going on about 27 years now, was mainly Dubai with some expatriate assignments in London and South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. So yeah, and worked, bounced around in a few jobs, then found marketing, fell in love, did that for 17 years. Got to the end of that journey, and took a break to see what I wanted to do, and then stumbled into education, fell in love with that, and have been doing that for 10 years.
Okay, great, thank you. So just explain to the viewers what the structure is going to be for this podcast. My vision for this episode, because I do see us doing multiple episodes down the line, is I really just want to focus on your journey, especially your experience with high school, and then your university experience, and then how it was like entering the workforce. I know you switched around with jobs, and then you had a huge change in your career path. You went from a really high position in a corporate company working in marketing, and then you just did a big pivot and you opened a nursery, which isn't really common, and you have a background in engineering. So I'm hoping to unpack that today and just dive into your brain and see what that was like for you. So I guess we'll start at the very beginning. So you've grown up in Dubai your whole life, and the UAE is a relatively new country. It was officially founded in 1971. So it's now 53 years old, so close to your age. And so do you mind, before we get into your experience in school, what was it like living in the UAE as in its really early stages? I mean, it's gone through crazy developments, and I think people don't really understand how new it was. So can you just explain to us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So some of my memories are sort of direct memories of Dubai, and some are more reflections as I got older, understanding what I was going through. But if I just put on a child's eyes, what I remember from growing up in Dubai, it was primarily, family, school was a big part of it, sports, and friends, and the city itself was really literally just house to house. I remember the time when I knew sort of all the restaurants in Dubai, and I remember losing losing that feeling that wow, I used to know every single place. And it started to grow. That was after university, so much that I remember the day when I was like, oh, I can't keep this up anymore. I can't know every restaurant in Dubai, right? So it was very, very small. Yeah, childhood memories, I would say, like I said, school, which wasn't particularly, besides the friends and the sports, wasn't particularly fun, although I was a very good academic student, meaning getting good results. Loved sports from a young age. We were lucky to be part of a club where we had, tennis and squash and ping pong, and that was a big part of my childhood. Sports and the beach volleyball and all of that. And yeah, just hanging out with the family and house to house, friends, places, things like that.
Okay, nice. And so, do you mind telling us a bit about we'll start at middle school and high school. So, which school did you go to, and what was your experience like? So, the three things I want you to maybe touch on from what you've told me is, I know you skipped grades. So I believe you skipped 3 grades. So, but by the time you were in 12th grade, you had already skipped 3 grades, which nowadays is crazy and unheard of. So I think you had a really interesting experience in high school. And then I know you were, I don't want to say a troublemaker, but you were a bit different to you are now. I mean, now you've had a buzz cut for as long as I can remember. And then I know you were telling me in high school you had some funky haircuts, some pineapple cuts, some ponytail, I think, or something like that. And so if you can just tell us what you were like, I guess, in high school. And then the last thing is, as you said, you were passionate about sports, and I remember you speaking about, you've always wanted to play guitar. So you can just tell us, like, what was it like, giving up some of your passions for school, and yeah.
Yeah, so on the grades thing, I think it was 2 grades that I skipped, but maybe also started a little bit young, and I did end up sometimes having classmates that were 3 years older, and also people who were my age but in 3 classes below me. Just on that skip grades thing, I think the overall theme of my academic journey, and this is something I talk a lot about today, in a very academic school, the most important skill is you get a lot of this knowledge download from the teachers and the books, and then you're expected to give it back to them in exams, and I mastered that skill really, really well. And that skill required 2 things, which I think most sort of academically inclined students have. One is a very good memory. So my 1 hour at the desk, I could, absorb and retain a lot of info. Plus, I could remember things from class. So even if I didn't understand them in September, when I sat down for a midterm to study, I could remember conversations that a professor had, which I didn't understand at the time, but now, while reading the book, it would help me complete my understanding. So memory was a big part of that. And then the second one is a very strong ability to suppress what I really feel like doing, which could be guitar and tennis, etc., and do what is important. And at the time, I had a very strong belief that that was the right thing to do. So sacrifice everything to get for academics and to get the grades. So, and the skipping grades bit, looking back, was just completely unnecessary. I think all the evidence is it's not productive. Socially, it makes things very awkward. You can imagine when you get to the teenage years, you're an 11-year-old with 13, 14-year-olds, very different priorities. Plus, I was small, so on top of that, That was also an issue, and so it's not something I think that I would do again and or recommend. Yeah, it was it something, that was I was proud of when I was young, in this race to who can finish things faster, earlier, etc. Yes, but it turned out in life that really didn't matter. So that was on the skipping grades bit. I'll just talk maybe about the third one, since we're touching base on that. I went to a very, very academic school. So this the idea of or the pressure to study, the amount of studying required was extremely high. And so this is a school where by the time we're in high school, we're doing about 3 hours of written exams a week, with 3 hours that you prepare for and 3 hours of multiple choice exams that are completely unprepared. So about 6 hours of testing a week. The school ran from 8 to 4, so quite a long day. And about ninth grade, I think it was either ninth or 10th grade, they removed we had 1 hour of art a week, 1 hour of music, and 1 hour of sports, physical education, which is very little. But in high school, they actually came and told us one day at the beginning of high school, we don't have time for that. And so even though you finish at 4, literally my day was, 2 hours of math to 1 hour of chemistry, physics, languages every single day. So very academic school. And just also to add to that, my parents had no sort of direct influence on that academic pressure. In fact, it was quite the opposite. My dad was an extremely hard worker, very absorbed in his work. Super caring guy, but just busy, basically making a living for the family. And he could, I always say, he could guess our grades, meaning which grade we were in, plus or minus a grade, right? So that it wasn't like there was any pressure from him. My mom, who's an educator, her philosophy was, I've been to school for a very long time. I've done exams. I now run a school, and there's no way I'm going to sit at home and sit and school you guys after school and, chase you on your homework. And so I've done enough school. So what you do at school is your business. Our responsibility ends when we go to the accountant and pay the bills on time. We work hard, we make money, we pay the bills for the school, and then what you do inside those four walls is up to you. If you put in the effort, you'll get a reward, and if not, it's really up to you. And our job, or my job, she used to say, is to convince your dad to pay for trips and to show you the world, and take you places and get you into sports and hobbies and things like that. That's what I consider my contribution as a parent to your education. So the pressure and the academic sort of focus was the school itself. Very academic school. You were defined by your ranks. They were published outside the class. So everybody knew who was first, second, or third in the class. That really defined who you were as your value, let's say. And reflecting on that now, this has been a recurring theme, I think, in my life, which is fighting for freedom, and I think it comes down to partly to that school environment, wanting to break free from that. So in terms of passions, the sports, I remember, I loved soccer, anything with the ball. Seeing a grass field just makes my heart happy, even today. I played everything: basketball, volleyball, ping pong, tennis, badminton. But I couldn't practice them, especially tennis was something I used to play competitively. I used to play on the junior circuit in Dubai. but I was competing against people who could play, practice 2, 3, 4 hours a day, whereas I could practice maybe 2 hours a week after I finished studying for those weekly exams. So even my weekends were dedicated mostly to studying, and then the weekdays absolutely no time, because we finish at 4. By the time we get home, have dinner, do our homework, and be in bed by 8. There was no time to step out of the house during the week. So I did play a lot of sports, but time was limited. And then the guitar, I took up the guitar. Till today, I have a very strong passion for music. I picked up the guitar, and I had to quit a few months later just because I had too much homework. And this is at age 9, grade 6. So, which I consider today to be, really wrong to be in that to be in that type of environment where you can't play the guitar. But it was I guess my choice to stop. My parents encouraged me. They bought the guitar, but I just didn't. Plus, the teacher was very strict and was sort of shouting at me. He was my art teacher, and same approach as the school. Very strict teachers, mostly very academic. Memorize this, memorize that. Nothing compared to what I saw you guys do when you took up your piano lessons with your teacher, and you'd say, let's play songs that we like, and he was cool with that, right? So very different environment. And I ended up selling that guitar for a profit without telling my parents. So that also, that little business streak started quite early back then as well. So the hair thing was, yes, I remember being young and having these cravings for, like, I want to get an earring, I want to grow my hair, I want to bleach my hair, and I could do, I while I was in high school with my parents, and the school was very strict with these things, I got away with, a few, I didn't get away with much in school. It was really when I went to university. So I grew my hair out. I had hockey hair, and then shaved everything and grew a pineapple. And then I did, shaved lines on the sides of my head. And yeah, that gave me a bit of a sense of freedom when I was in university doing my own thing. A funny story with my dad. While I was young, I wanted to start playing around my hair and getting some cool haircuts. And I go to the hairdresser with him where he cuts his hair, and he had a very classic, parted from here. He's had it for decades. And we go to the hairdresser, and I sit down, and I think I'm old enough now to tell the guy what I want. And I'm like, so I want this on this side and short here. And then my dad's just listening, nodding his head, and then this and that. And then once I was done, my dad looked at the hairdresser and said, "Cut like me." and I burst into tears. So I did end up getting my own haircut, but not like his. But it was basically his way of saying, like, "What are you talking about?" So yeah, so that's a little bit about those things. Yeah, so the school is the International High School of Shweifat. We call it Shweifat. It's in Sharjah, which is one of the northern Emirates in the UAE, because they didn't have a branch next to us in Dubai. So we used to go an hour to school, hour to go, hour to come. And looking back, for my parents, that was one of the most reputable schools in terms of academic achievements, and I think that's why they put us there. Some of the other schools, like the American school, for example, was a dream of a school even back then in terms of the campus, the facilities, etc. But it was literally triple the price of the school we went to, so completely unaffordable. Not sure if my parents would have put us in that school, but yeah. So we were in it, and while we were in it, like I said, I thought everything was okay. I mean, this is the system. I didn't know any better. There weren't too many options, and so it was what it was. But definitely, when I got into education much later, a lot of it was doing the opposite, or doing things very differently than that school.
Yeah, I definitely later on, once we get into your path with opening the nursery, I definitely want to talk about how your high school experience shaped how you know, structured your university and structured your nursery and the curriculum. And so transitioning into finally you're in grade 12 and then you're, deciding on a university. Do you mind or can you explain to us what was going through your mind at that time? Were you interested about any subjects? How did you decide on engineering? Was it something that Jiddo and Teta pushed on you? And then how did you also decide the location of the university?
Okay. Yeah, so if I look back on my schooling days, it felt like being on a super fast train, and then you're just getting exams thrown at you. So there wasn't really much time to think about, do I like this or like that? And there wasn't much space for autonomy, right? So there weren't really too many projects or things where you get your own space. It literally was, when's the next exam next week? And then there's the big final exam. And then at the end of the year, it's the big final exam that counts for 50% of your grade for the entire year. So it just felt like stuff was thrown at me and I was responding. There wasn't much time to reflect. And if you remember what I said about, I had a very good memory, which meant, if I'm studying history and someone asked me a question about, in an exam, which year did Bismarck invade this or that, I could remember in the book that it was somewhere on the left-hand side of the page, somewhere at the bottom, and there was an 82 in it, something like that. And then I would think, okay, it can't be 1982 and it can't be 1782. It's got to be, 1882. So memory was very helpful for this process of give me the knowledge, I give it back to you in the exam, and I was getting excellent grades. So straight A student, and then going along with it, I was suppressing, if you remember, I was saying suppressing what you really want to do. So I became very good at suppressing what I wanted to do. So when the time came to apply for university, that was the first time, I think when I look at this, as opposed to the train, super fast things coming at you, now it's like, hey, you need to make a choice. What do you want to study? And I had no clue. How do you even answer that question? What does that mean? And the idea of I should look inside of myself, to figure out what I like, wasn't even on the radar. I wasn't even aware that was a thing. So I remember going to ask my mom. So I'm faced with the college applications. I went to ask my mom, and I said, Mom, we've always been quite close in terms of discussions, what do you think about this or that type of conversations, which came back later, came in very handy later when we worked together in the nursery. But so I asked her, I said, what do you think? And I remember something like, what are you talking about? You're asking me, I'm from a different generation, I'm old school, I have no idea what's inside of you, you need to choose. And plus there's so many things that I'm not aware of, like computers and things like that. So, and she literally, I think, just walked off what a question. Imagine a 50-year-old telling an 18-year-old, or I was 16 at the time, what they should study, so which is credit to her, the right approach. She didn't put any pressure or, do this or do that, nothing. And so I didn't get any preparation from the school. There was nothing nothing from inside of me. So I ended up defaulting basically to the groups I was in, basically my school group. And I think the choices I made ended up being basically what other parents were telling their kids, which was what I was hearing at school, talking to people. And in our culture, typically it's doctor, engineer, lawyer. These are the things that parents are very proud of. So like I said, I didn't have that in my household as something ever drilled into us. On the contrary, my mom has always been a follower of her passions, which came in very handy later as an inspiration, and loves her work. So I'm at school, and you're getting good grades, and when you have good grades, you get into the science end of things. So I was in the science section, not because I particularly liked these subjects, but I was just good at passing exams and getting good grades. And I went through a process of elimination, basically. So it was doctor, engineer, lawyer. That's what I was hearing about. Teachers would, if I ever asked, I can't remember specifics, but, oh, you're a good student. You should do something like, engineering or something like that. And basically, I started eliminating. So medicine, for some reason, I chose history instead of biology in grade 10, and I would have been 13 years old at the time. And so 2 years later, when I'm applying medicine, was needed biology. And I was like, that's interesting. A choice I made when I was 13 eliminated the possibility of going into medicine. And I remember retaining that. And it also feeds into the work I do today. So you're a lawyer and an engineer, and literally lawyer without understanding what it was. I just felt like that's a lot of reading. I don't like reading a lot. I mean, I love reading, but I don't like just a lot of writing. I like, concise, structured things, etc. If without understanding that there was social activism or different angles of the legal profession, I just eliminated that, and so all that was left was engineering. And I was applying to Montreal at the time. So you asked me about location. My that was one thing my dad specifically did insist on. We had applied to for the Canadian permanent residency. So we grew up with Lebanese passports, which were becoming very difficult to travel with, to get visas. And so my parents dreamt of getting us passports that opened up more possibilities for us, and so they had applied for to become residents of Canada. And so my dad said, and my brother went the year before me to Montreal. So my dad was like, don't look left, don't look right. You need to go to Montreal. Inside of me, this rebellious streak came up, and I was like, no way, I'm not going, and I'm not going. My brother also, to me, represented parents, because he was always very mature, very serious, very sort of, he treated me like he took care of me, took care of my needs, let's say. But so that was like in the mornings, put on your jacket, it's cold. And just because he said it, I wouldn't put on my jacket, and I'd go freeze my butt off at school all day just to express some sort of freedom from. I literally, I think, was gonna put on my jacket that morning because it was cold, and then he'd pass by and say, put on your jacket, it's cold, and I take it off because I didn't want him to think I did it just because he said so. So I was suppressed, if you like, academically or in that whole process, and I was finding ways to break free. So I did apply to universities in the US, but the only way to get in was through a scholarship, and I didn't get into the universities I wanted. I think I managed to squeeze in one application to Yale and didn't get in, and so I ended up going to Canada. And while I was applying to McGill in Montreal, I remember they had the book where they describe things about the school, the application for the book for students who are applying, and part of it was, this is the faculty, these are the different faculties, and a paragraph on each major. So I opened the engineering section, and it was like a paragraph on each topic. So civil engineering is this and that. And I'd go through them. So civil was like, chemical, no way. I didn't really enjoy chemistry. And then electrical engineering, I was like, too abstract, didn't like that. Mechanical, I was like, meh. And then mining and metallurgy, what the hell is that? No. And then I ran through all of them, and they were done. And so I've eliminated medicine, I've eliminated law, and now I've run out of options in engineering. So I was like, oops, I better go back and find one, because there's nothing left. And so I go run through them again, and it's like civil, meh, electrical, no, chemical, no, and then mechanical was like, meh. So on a meh, I chose my destiny, which was mechanical engineering, basically by elimination. So there was no sort of I like this or I have some sort of interest. It was just, yeah, that's I have good grades. I'm a good student. I should go into, something challenging like engineering, and I chose mechanical. And yeah, so that was the process of choosing, and I got into McGill. I don't think I applied to too many places. Got into McGill, which was of course a highly reputable school. My parents were happy. My brother was there. It worked for the Canadian. We were in the process of applying, so I ended up going. And yeah, that was my journey out of high school.
So now you've chosen mechanical engineering. You've moved to Montreal and you're getting started with your degree at McGill. Can you just walk us through your university experience? So how was engineering in your first year, and how did it change throughout the degree? I know at some point, I don't know if it was at the start, but you lived with Karim, which is pretty funny, knowing both of you. And and then later we'll touch on some jobs, some side jobs that you were doing while in university.
Yeah. Um, yeah, a university is, just reflecting on it now in the way that you've structured the questions is probably, looking back, sort of a big transition for me. Not necessarily what was happening inside the buildings of the university, but just in my own headspace, basically. So there's a lot to unpack there. Um, so there's a lot to unpack in the university years because it was a transition year. I'll try to see how I can summarize it. But the sort of main things that happened were, so I got in, and I remember this feeling of being tired from the academics at school. We were led to believe, by the teachers, that school is super tough. It's a very competitive school, but if you do well, life will be easy. University will be easy. And I remember they used to pride themselves on saying that, for example, the economics book, I remember it was a book by Samuelson that some universities use in year 2. We've pushed it down to grade 11, so you guys are getting it early. They didn't tell us what they took out, obviously, so a time for other things. But this idea of just the pressure, getting the grades, etc. I remember feeling tired, and I think I was expecting that university would now be easy because I did everything that was required. I got the grades. I was ranked third or second in the class. Most years in a very competitive class. I think I had the 12th or 13th highest SAT scores in the school's history at the time, in a school that sends people, to MIT. So I had done very, very well, and I think I got to university with this expectation that things would be easy. So that's one thing, one dynamic. The other dynamic was this is also a period. One very important trait of mine, looking back, is I love observing and watching people. And I have very early memories of observing things, trying to understand, picking up on things. I like the way this person spoke to that person, or I didn't like the way this customer service situation was handled, or how this client behaved, or how this father spoke to their son. I would always be observing when things were happening around me and just digesting these things, not knowing that eventually would be something I would use for my career. But university really is the time, although I have a few memories before then of observing people and figuring stuff out for myself. University was really a time when I started really thinking about, okay, what's going on? Why am I unhappy? Why are these people, why do they look so happy? I aspire to be like these people. I don't aspire to be like those, etc. So I started observing things. So that's another key component of university. The third thing, living. So I ended up living with my brother. We're super close today. I love my brother. I trust my brother with everything in my life. He's one of the most honest, straight people, direct and just clean, reliable persons that I know. And I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. But yeah, I remember the first few days of university, or first few weeks, I discovered the library, McLennan Library in McGill, which is one of the largest libraries in Montreal. I can't remember how many books we're talking about. I can't remember if it's 20,000 or 50,000, but just a huge multi-floor library. I'd never seen anything like this in my life. And I was just amazed, like, wow, there's a computer and I can literally just search for any book from any country on any topic, and then it'll tell me where I can find it. And so I got lost in this library, just like book after book after book. And I came home, classes ended at 2 or 3. I came home about 8 o'clock, and my brother was at the door like, where were you? I was worried about you, we didn't have mobile phones back then. And I was thinking to myself, like, dude, I just left my parents. I'm supposed to be in university. I'm supposed to be free. And now I have my dad sitting in front of me, or a parent sitting in front of me, asking me, where did I go and where did I come? So we'd have a huge, fight about it, or an argument. So yeah, we did nitpick at each other. We sorted that out a lot the second year after I had I called basically a family meeting, impromptu, on the spot while we were on holiday that summer, and I said, okay guys, this is not working. I'm not going back to Montreal unless these things happen. And it was two big requests. One was, we need to live like roommates, which means we stop, we split everything down the middle. We have a fridge. I have my eggs, he has his eggs, it's exactly how roommates live. And I have my milk, he has his milk, because I'm fed up of waking up in the morning thinking I'm gonna make some eggs and he's finished them, or vice versa. He'd get angry at me for who finished the milk and whatever. So that was one request. And the second was, because he was the older one, he ran the budget for the house, so my dad would give him the money every month, and then he was responsible for giving me my spending money and then spending on purchases for the house. And I had just taken a course in accounting, which I loved, and I went back, and my brother wasn't able to balance the books. He was always, we were running out of money at the end of the month. We'd overspend, and then we'd not able to order, or buy groceries for a week or so because we'd run out of money, or he'd get on the phone with my dad asking for more. And so that summer, while we were on holiday, we were actually doing the medical exams for the final step to get the immigration documents for Canada. I said, I insist that I get my own bank account. I don't want to get handouts from my brother. I want to control my own money. I'll control the whole budget for the house, and I promised my dad I would give him a full reconciliation. Everything would be balanced, debits, credits, expenses, etc. And then I wanted this idea of living like a roommate, so we would stop arguing. And I remember my mom being sort of very upset, like, but you're brothers, you're not like roommates, this and that. And I was like, it's gonna be better for us as brothers. And they kind of looked. For the other one, it was almost like a joke in the family, because here I am, and I'm small, and I'm the young one, and asking for more responsibility. And my brother's always been, very serious, very responsible. And so they were like, what? And then my brother basically made it a challenge. He's like, fine, let's see what you can do with the book. See if you can do a better job. And that's why my parents agreed. So he's like, fine, and I did it, and I did a great job. So we ended up with a balanced budget. Everyone got their money, detailed expenses, etc. So and then things quietened down on the home front. We were just less in each other's hair, and just got on with things. And then my sister joined us, which also made things better. 2 against 1 is always helpful. I love you, bro, if you ever listen to this. Let's just say my brother's very detail oriented, and I can be a bit sloppy sometimes, and we'd end up in a lot of unnecessary arguments. So that became better. So that's on that front. On the other two. And then on the side jobs. Sorry, just you asked about that. I think one of the best experiences I've ever had financially was my parents basically saying, my dad was an employee working really hard, long hours, trying to pay for family, tuition for three kids, university for three kids. And I remember when they went to Montreal so my brother stayed in the residence his first year. That's also something I'm upset about, or I got upset about back then, that I didn't get the residence experience because my brother was already there and he wanted to move out into an apartment and he sold it to my parents. Basically, if Salim comes, then we'll live in an apartment together. And I was like, but I want to live on the dorms, and that was just not a discussion. So I didn't meet people, and I held a grudge for a long time about that. But anyway, so my parents, and I remember my mom saying, if we were living in Montreal, we would put you basically in the student ghetto, or if we were, or you'd live at home. But because we're not here, and for our own peace of mind, we live, so far away. We're basically 12 hours or 14 hours of flying away from you. We're going to put you in a safe and premium neighborhood, which is going to cost a lot in terms of rent. But we're going to take it out of your pocket money. So you're going to live on a very tight budget, so that we have peace of mind. And so we literally, I mean, for me, McDonald's was a huge luxury. It was a big decision. Like $5 for a meal, for one meal, was, I could spend the $5 in one meal, or I could go to the supermarket, get a block of cheddar, bag of tomatoes, bag of toast, and make sandwiches for a whole week with the same amount of money, right? So, and it really taught me a lot about managing money and and understanding, the value of money. So working was, I first of all, I love the freedom of working, making my own money more than academics. I've always especially back then when I wasn't studying things that I liked. So I looked for jobs and odd jobs here and there, carrying carpets for auctions, standing on a stage, holding them up, for day jobs. And I did get a regular job, I think my second summer there, and it was in a call center, basically taking sales calls for steam cleaning, for home furniture and carpets, and did really well. Loved it. Got a promotion the next year, even though I was the youngest guy in the operation, and I was a summer hire. But that really gave me a big boost in terms of, okay, I'm not enjoying this university thing, the whole academics thing, but I love work, and when I can get results and make money, and I'm good at it. I was good at handling, even at the age of 19, 20, the other call center agents, if they had difficult clients that were angry, if their house smelled like wet, moldy laundry because the guys came to steam clean and it rained, they would pass those clients on to me, and I was the last stop. And if I couldn't handle it, then we would pass it on to my boss. And I remember there was only one customer that I had to pass on to my boss who was really being unreasonable. So that's as far as the side jobs came, and that autonomy that I got for making my own money, making my own decisions, saving up money, being able to spend, etc. That was really important for me. With regards to the university itself, as I said, I had this feeling of I'm tired now and I've done all the hard work, I've done everything, so things should be easy. And then this observation skill that I've always had started basically gathering info. And so some of the stuff I remember, for example, was, when I was in school, at least for the academics, the aspirational thing was who was first, who would get the highest grade. It was grades, 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 grades. And something in me was starting to change with that. I got to university and I started, picking up on different dynamics. So I could see the students, the sort of the 99% student that is excellent at getting grades, but socially were extremely awkward. In most cases, there were a few that could do both, but usually they were extremely awkward. They felt lifeless to me. They were just basically a robot, a computer that could get a very good grade in an exam, but I didn't see the value in that. I was starting to think of what comes next. And I just felt like, how would these people work? How will they collaborate? Maybe in a research job or something that a computer can do on a desk. A desk job that requires that type of thinking. And one day they'll be replaced by computers. I remember thinking that, so that's not something I'm particularly excited about. What I did aspire to, I remember comparing, how the Canadian students that were coming out of the high schools there, and they have a system in Montreal, in Quebec, which is a pre-college system called CEGEP, sort of like a in between high school and university, where you start to get the same concept as university, picking your courses and having more freedom than a typical high school. And I just was in awe of these students. They felt so well-rounded. I remember the confidence. Like I went to university, sitting in a lecture hall. If I wanted to go to the bathroom, I was almost going to ask the professor for permission to go to the bathroom. Like that's how strict the environment I came from in terms of school. And these guys are like, hey, professor, I disagree with what you said. And I'd be expecting the professor to berate them. And then he'd be like, oh, why? Tell me what you think. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is so cool, so interesting, but so new to me. And these guys, it feels like they got a much better preparation, so they had time to play sports. They had time to do courses, even though they were pre-engineering students, and they were as prepared. They did, philosophy classes and business classes, and just felt more well-rounded than me. And I remember the last shred of wanting to hang on to. It's not possible that everything I just did, all that effort, all the long nights, studying for exams was pointless. And so I thought, if they've got all those things, I must have. What was the point of why I spent all those years in high school, basically going from exam to exam? And I thought, okay, maybe I didn't get those other things, but for sure I'm going to be better academically. So I was holding on to that hope, as that's otherwise nothing makes sense. And it's true that we started AdCal first. I think it was the first term of engineering, advanced calculus, and yes, first chapter, the guys get started integrals. Oh, I've done that in grade 11, easy peasy, and it's new to them. So I thought, okay, this is there's a reason why I suffered so much in school. And then chapter 2, double integrals, I've done that, triple integrals. And then sort of halfway through this one course in the first year, chapter X, whatever it was, chapter 6, let's say, line integrals. And I thought, what? I haven't done line integrals. Like, that's new to me, and it's new to them, and that's it. I got a few chapters in math class, like all that suffering, sacrificing the guitar and the tennis, and crying before exams from that pressure. That was just to give me a few weeks, and now we're in the same boat, and these guys they seem so much happier, well-rounded, etc. And one last, sort of like, this can't be true. I went, and I am studying something I'm not enjoying, and I'm just gonna have to face another 4 years. And McGill was very similar to my high school, in the sense that it was exam to exam, and you're defined by your grades. And sort of the practical bit, the projects, the case studies were not given a lot of importance. I remember, I don't know how I got this info. It was directly from the career office. I think I went to see the career office, and they had this one room somewhere where this guy's responsible for career counseling. And I asked, hey, what happens to McGill students? I want to know now if I'm going to suffer another 4 years. then maybe the dream comes true. All the hard work pays off. So, what happens to McGill students, engineering students, after they graduate? And the guy was like, he says, okay, yeah, so roughly we have about 100 graduates every year in engineering, between civil, chemical, electrical, mechanical, etc. And then he says, and typically, Bell Canada will hire one student, maybe the top electrical engineer, and then Hydro-Quebec will hire one student. And he named basically 3 companies that would hire 3 students, and then everybody else, they'll have to send out their CV and see how it goes. And sometimes it can be a difficult market, like we're going through a recession now, and they might have to get jobs in restaurants until they get a proper job, etc. And I just remember my world kind of falling apart. It was like, I've suffered unnecessarily, done enormous sacrifices, pushed out things that I love to do. This was supposed to make life easy. I'm now studying a major I don't even like, I don't enjoy, and it's going to be another 4 years of this stuff. And it doesn't seem like there's a point. Like, I'm going to graduate and then suffer some more to go get a job, So the McGill promise of life will be easy if you get this degree from this very reputable university. So I described that time as a depression, basically. You're forced, in a way, forced. I mean, I put that boundary on myself. I'm doing something I don't like for no purpose. And that just really tore me up inside. And I didn't want to change majors because I thought this whole school thing, if this is what it's like, exams, I'm not enjoying it. And if I change majors, I'll lose the year of engineering, and then I'll have to add another 4 years. And I don't want to take that risk of extending this basically process that I don't like at all. So I'd rather just finish, and then maybe work. I'll sort myself out. I'll figure out how to be happy, basically. So beyond the 4 walls of university, I was very happy. I had my intramurals, my soccer, my friends, but it was just the school itself, the program. I didn't really enjoy. And one little glimpse into how things changed for me in the future: engineering allowed us to take a few electives, really very few, because it was packed. We had things like engineering, economy, effective written communication, and I chose one called technology and society. And I remember reading, and it was from the sociology department, and I remember reading the write-up for the course, and it was something like, this course will compare American society with Japanese society, and then specifically how technology affected the two, and how they evolved and developed in certain ways similarly, in certain ways differently. And I remember getting really excited, like, wow, we're going to study American culture and or society and Japanese society, and I'm fascinated by Japanese society and just people, etc. And that was my first A in university. I loved that class. I would go to the lectures. I would read all the books. All the teacher would give us mandatory reading, and then he'd give us like 5-6 optional books, really, and I'd go read all of them, and I'd rewrite my notes in the evening, and I got an A. And I still did not put 2 and 2 together, in terms of, why don't you go study this thing? I wasn't even aware that I could go and follow this passion. So when I look back on that, I think the journey I went through was being on that train. If you asked me, what do you like to do? I didn't even know that was a thing. I wasn't even aware. I got to university and then started becoming aware of this idea of you can be happy and successful at the same time by looking at these students, the ones that I aspired to. And I remember the ones that I really triggered something, or also triggered something inside of me. I remember this a story around the engineering building. So you've got to imagine heading. It's winter. Classes are, you know, this old buildings. It's boring. I don't even like the topics, and so it's not my favorite part of the day. And once it's done, that's when I'm happy to go back home and do my sports and whatever, and connect with my friends. But I'm coming off campus. It's the afternoon. It's getting dark. It's winter. So campus is not something I'm excited to be leaving, basically. And I see these students walking towards the engineering building, carrying a bag, you know, of like spare parts, what looked like little engines or motors or things like that, and a 6-pack of beer. I found out, you know, that these guys, like, you know, were going to the basement of the engineering building to work. They were working on a project, and they were building a solar-powered car to race in. There was a race, university race somewhere in Florida, I think, or somewhere in the US in several months. And so they were building a car. And so here they are coming into university with beers, and they're having fun, and they're doing this on their own time with their own money. And I remember thinking, and I'm asked, and when is the race? Oh, the race is in December. And I thought, but December, that's when the final exams are. So did you get permission to skip the exams? And they're like, no, we tried. We begged the professor. He didn't agree. So we're just going to miss the exam and fail the course. But it's no big deal. Next term, we'll just sign up for the course again. We won't attend any of the lectures, and we'll just sit for the exam. So they were spending their own money, suffering, to pursue something that they, you know, against, basically, despite the resistance, the obstacles, they were pursuing something that they loved. And I remember looking at these guys thinking, those are real engineers. Like, they love what they do, and I like that. So that's when I would say I moved a notch higher. So if you like, if I want to grade my ability to reverse this process of pushing down what I like to do, which has been a process my entire life, an F would be you're not even aware that it's a thing to ask, like, what do you like? Like, who cares what I like? What's out there? What do other people think? That's an F, let's say. A C is probably no. It is important to find out. It is a thing to like what you do. There are people that like what they do, and then a B, I would say, is that moment where I realized, wow, these guys love engineering, and but it's not for me. So I start to eliminate the things that I'm not passionate about, and then by cleaning that out of my life, I can start to hopefully see what it is that I do like. And so an A is able to identify, you know, their passions in that, if we're able to grade that. So yeah, we spent a lot of time in this period, but it was a very important period. The rest of university was basically continuing to use my memory and ability to sit down at a desk, you know, for 5-6 hours, get the grades. I graduated with a 3.4 GPA. Didn't like any of the subjects. I can remember a few things here and there. And I loved the electives. I loved my organizational behavior class because it was all about psychology, culture at work, technology and society. So anything related to people and behavior, I loved, and that was a clue for what ended up being my career. So that's the university years.
Very, very interesting. And I would love to hear a lot of like your advice on what you would give to people in university, but I do want to save that for another podcast because I think we could spend hours talking about university, and I think we both have pretty similar opinions on the university system. Yeah, so now we'll transition into your career. So just take us to the point where you just graduated from McGill, and now you have to start applying for jobs. So what was that like, and what was the first job you got?
So I was actually happy living in Montreal, and my brother and I graduated at the same time. He was desperate not to go back to Dubai, and he ended up spending the last 6 months of university basically focusing more on sending out his CV than on his academics. I didn't, and he got a fantastic job right out of university. Ended up staying in Montreal. I couldn't get a job. I was sending CVs left, right, and center. You've got to imagine this sort of 20-year-old, very shy, not much practical experience in anything, didn't really like engineering. And so, and it was in the middle of a recession in Canada in the mid 90s. So couldn't stay, on my parents' money and without a job, and had to go back home basically. So went back to Dubai after a summer break. So the savings from the jobs paid for a month in Europe, biking trip, camping trip, and lots of Nutella. And that's for another podcast. But got to Dubai and started sending out my CV. And Dubai was not what it is today. It used to be basically not too many companies had their head offices in Dubai, and so you didn't have a lot of junior positions, a lot of rep offices. But my first job through a connection, a person that my family knew, agreed to share it with his colleague who interviewed me, and basically I got a job for less than $1,000 in an IT division in a company called Oceaneering. And the guy who hired me thought he would make a Fox Pro programmer out of me. It's a type of coding language. And quickly realized that I had better skills, which were I could understand the technical team, but I had the confidence to speak to clients and explain to them how the software worked, and I could bridge that gap. And so that was a pretty good job. I ended up getting a lot of responsibilities early on. Developed carpal tunnel syndrome in both my wrists. First, the right wrist from using the mouse 10 hours a day on the keyboard, shifted the mouse to the left side, got carpal tunnel syndrome, could not touch a keyboard or a mouse without excruciating pain. So I had to leave that job, and then stumbled around in a few jobs until I did something, my first taste of entrepreneurship, just the pre-work of entrepreneurship, which was getting the Subway fast food franchise, or the development agency, not the franchise, for a company in Dubai. It was an amazing project. I ended up, traveling to the US, going to Subway headquarters, presenting to them. They loved my presentation. And that was my first exposure to marketing. And I loved it. And I remember it came very intuitively, questions like, how would you ensure good customer service? And for me, because I've always been observing people wherever I am, in the supermarket, in a shop, I would rattle off, well, if you want good customer service, it's the staff that are giving the service. So if you want happy customers, you need happy staff. And people would look at me and like, wow, he's so young, but so smart. And I'd be like, isn't that obvious? And I realized for the first time in my life at work that here's my passion. Like I found something that I'm really good at. I remember, and so I applied for a job, or Gillette actually had been seeking me for a job. I had said no to it because I was on this entrepreneurial project, and then realized what I loved about it was the marketing, not necessarily Subway or the fast food industry or the restaurant industry. And so I then contacted Gillette, said, I'm ready for an interview, went to this interview, and for the first time in my life, breezed through it. The guy asked me questions. Why are you here? I said, well, I've realized I love marketing, and I haven't studied it in university, so I'm going to study it with FMCG companies, consumer goods, because they're the pioneers of marketing. And so it's just a question of which company. I'm not too good at selling shampoos or detergent if they don't have a lot of differentiation. To me, they're all the same, but I love your product. It's very sporty, it's very high tech, and so that's why I'm here. And I had not prepared for this. These were just coming out, and so I was in flow. I didn't have that language back then, but looking back on it now, so that was just the rubber hit the road finally, and that triggered a 17-year career in marketing, which just was this fantastic journey. And at the beginning, I remember 6 months, a few months into the job with Gillette. So now supermarkets take on a different dimension. I'm going to supermarkets and I'm looking at shelves and eye level display and gondola ends and promotions. And I remember calling my wife, calling Russia from a supermarket. I was like, Russia, you won't believe it. I've been to the supermarket since I was a kid. I know this supermarket inside out, but now I see it with totally different eyes. You know what's going on, why they put the bread in the back and the chocolates in the front. And she was, listening, and she goes, "Oh, that's so nice, honey, fantastic. Don't forget to bring the fish for dinner tonight. See you later." And I remember going, "Oh, I find it fascinating. She doesn't. I found my thing. I found something that I'm good at, that I like, that is not everyone's passion." And that triggered a career, 17-year journey in marketing. It was 3 years with Gillette. They sent me to London on an expat assignment, which was a dream at 27. Back to Dubai, changed a couple of jobs. Basically, when the passion, I loved marketing, but when I felt the passion was no longer there, the learning curve wasn't there in any particular company, and I wasn't learning enough, even if sometimes I was getting promotions and salaries. The London assignment was phenomenal. Living as an expat in the UK, 2-bedroom apartment at the age of 27, all expenses paid. But at one point, the job became boring, and I said no. And people thought I was crazy. Like, how can you throw this away? But I had already lived a big part of my life unhappy inside. Once I discovered my passion and being happy, I no longer wanted to go there. So I was very clear, like, I'd rather sacrifice. I'll figure something out. And that's why those university years were so key. Yeah, so it was worked for different multinationals. The last job was 10 years between Dubai and Cape Town, South Africa. 3 years there, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And then at the end of that career, worked so different industries: Gillette, consumer goods, baby food, tobacco, and started feeling, not as a sudden dynamic, but this is starting to run out of steam for me. The junior jobs up to the level of a marketing director, I felt like I was doing real things, working on market challenges. I loved those, understanding consumers and finding solutions for them. But as I got more and more senior, the job focus became more and more on internal stakeholder management. And that's something that I just never really was very interested in. I was always about the external market and fixing problem solving, basically understanding consumers. So I got this amazing on paper promotion, very senior position in the company, to go to the headquarters in London. Said yes because that's what you work for, and something started to bother me for the first time in my career again, that much. And I couldn't figure it out. I didn't look in the obvious places, but through some discussions with different colleagues, some of them were like, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Are you even considering, not going? This is what we work for. This is the dream. At this grade, if you just do this, you retire, you're sorted financially, blah, blah, blah." And that just, that didn't satisfy the what was bugging me. And then I had one conversation with a colleague who just grabbed the issue by the heart and said, "You've been talking and about doing your own thing. I've heard you. I've seen that you've tinkered with a few projects here and there. When would be the perfect time for you to do that?" And it was such, I knew the answer immediately, but it was so good. I stopped thinking about it, because it was like a chocolate that is so juicy. I didn't want to finish it on the spot. So I went home and spoke to Russia, and we had been talking about London. We had been talking about, we had already the company had paid the deposits on your tuition fees in a school in London. We were looking at where we were going to live, etc. And something was bothering me about the job. So I did a pros and cons. Just what are the things I like about this move? What are the things that are bothering me? And it was full of pros. Living in London would be great, and a second round in London, especially with living in a really nice area. For you guys, it would be excellent. You'd have another city under your belt. We could do so many things, travel around Europe, etc., etc., etc. And then in the cons, it was the job. So I knew that 20% of the job would be what I would love to do, which was basically figure out the plan, and I already had a plan in mind. I knew what I would do in that position that they were offering me, which was a great position. But I knew that the vast majority of my time would be then convincing others about the plan, and in a big corporate environment, those aligning people with different interests that aren't necessarily all focused on what's best for the company is just not something that I'm good at or interested in. So I just sat with Russia. I said, I can't take this job because I'm gonna be unhappy at work, and if I'm unhappy at work, everything else starts to. So I turned it down, and I said, look, I'm happy in the current job. I'll just run this one out, but this will be my last job, and then I'm gonna see what I'm gonna do. So I stayed on for another year or two until we agreed to part ways at the end of that assignment. And without a plan, I just knew that I needed to stop doing what I was doing in order, and something would emerge. I had that confidence because I'd done this before, that without knowing clearly what it was that I wanted to do, I knew that I had to stop doing what it was that was occupying so much of my time, and then something would come up. And at first it was, okay, let me take this opportunity to become an entrepreneur. I've been dreaming about doing my own thing. I got very close when I was young, 27, and it didn't work out. And so this is my chance, and I'll give it a year. If it works, it works. If not, then I'll get it out. I would have gotten it out of my system, and I'll go back to employment. I'll choose the type of work that satisfies me, and I'll stop, thinking about doing my own thing and pestering myself about it. Like I haven't done it. So stopped in it was December 2013. No apparent plan, nothing, no projects that I was interested in came up, and I was thinking I'm looking for marketing projects. I'm a marketing guy. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna just take some time off and rest and enjoy the family, and travel to the US, see my sister and my nephews who I haven't seen, and one of them I hadn't seen at all. He was very young, 1 year old, and the other I hadn't seen in a long time. And then there was a project that sort of came up on the side, which was my mom had been running a nursery school, a kindergarten, for about 35 years. It was always this thing that she did, she loved to do, but it was her thing, and none of the family was really involved. And I had thought about it in the past, what would happen one day when she decides to stop or retire, it'll be a shame. She has she built something with such a fantastic reputation, very well known, has done a great job in the community. And so and also parents had been asking for more branches of the school. The city had grown, continued to grow, and some people could no longer reach the original branch. So I thought, all right, I'm going to help mom on the side. I'll do this project. I'll put the investment from my savings for the second branch. I'll set it up. I'll put in some admin as well, because she loves the education bit, but there was no accounting, no accountant, or very little. no processes, no contracts with the staff, etc. A lot of verbal stuff. It was working, but it would not, for the future. It was definitely something that we needed to improve. So I thought I'll help with that. I'll set it up, hire the team, and then I'll go do the project, the market. I'll find the marketing project, and I ended up falling in love with education. And it turned out that when I did have that aha moment, I thought about it and I thought, why am I so excited about education? I'm a marketing guy, and then it was like suddenly this like, oh my god, I'm actually a consumer psychology guy. Like my career split into two, which was the parts that I loved and the parts that I did as homework to support the parts that I loved. So if someone said, figure out this consumer and what they could need in 10 years time and understand them, I could sit for hours like studying consumer behavior, research, etc. And then if it was, okay, well, you've come up with a product, prove it, build the business case for it. I'm good with numbers, with Excel, etc. I would go and build it, but that wasn't my particular passion. My passion was the consumer psychology. So education was actually going deeper into psychology and human development. And so the whole circle came back, which was I love to observe people, and I've been observing them from a very young age. And I always reflected on my own journey, especially the education journey, and why was it so difficult, and why did I not pick up on my passion earlier. And so all of that came together, got into education, and at first was I'm thinking I'm not going to add much to the pedagogical bit because that's not my area of expertise. And then one day in an interview when I was hiring a potential manager, she said to me, yes, you follow a certain curriculum, but there are different curricula out there. And I thought, wow, it's true. There are so many different ways of so many different curricula, British, American, progressive, academic, etc. So let me go do my research. That just was an amazing journey of deep diving into education, and came out of it with a very just a fire for this field, and that inspired the last 10 years. So we ended up opening the second branch in January 2015. We had 15 students. So originally, the original branch was running at around 100 students. And then opened the second branch in 2015, and then the third branch in 2022. So today we have 3 branches, 250 students. And I love this field and still have a lot of ideas for it. And yeah, as you said, lots to talk about there. But maybe just to break it up into the school's journey in three phases. Phase 1, I would say, is my mom's phase, which was an incredible 35 years of deep knowledge and experience, and everything we do today rides on her shoulders. She created the platform for us to join in 2014 and build on. The second phase was this pilot between 2014 until about 2020, until about COVID, which was I did, in discussions with my mom, make some changes to the program to make it more future fit. And that's when we introduced the Montessori system, and did some changes to the core curriculum, which we were very close to, but we formalized a few things, made some changes. And it was, for me, the excitement of a pilot. Will this work? Will it attract parents? Will it be financially successful? And as soon as those two questions were answered very successfully, the interest faded a bit. So the excitement of doing the research, figuring something out, piloting it, tweaking it, once it was proven successful, the next phase, which is replicating and scaling it, is not one that I'm too excited about. I know there are people who do that a lot better than me. I wanted to move on to, okay, so I've done this for this age group. I'd like to now see what's the evolution in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. So I would say that's the second phase, was this pilot. The third phase was bringing on a partner who is an expert in administration and management and commercial acumen, to partner with my passion for education and my the whole family, my mom, my wife, who all love the school and have each put their own bits and pieces into it. And now we're on the third phase, which is codifying, standardizing the schools, if you like, what's special about the school, so that it can become consistent, and that we can replicate it and grow it from where we are today. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Nice. I just want to touch back right to the point where you had left your job. Like, were you, I'm sure you were, there was some hesitation with that. Were you at all worried? And what steps did you take? I know you had, saved up some money, but were there any other measures that you put in place to manage the risk of, you had a family, we were living in Dubai. I'm sure expenses were high. We went to a private school. So what were those measures that you put in place?
So I would break them up into three parts. I would say the financial plan, the personal sort of headspace, the psychological plan, and then the relationships. Dealing with, because there were other people obviously involved. Were there moments of doubt and anxiety? Absolutely. This was a huge move, but I had started to become better at picking up on this is the right move, and there's some anxiety about will it work or not, but it is the right direction. And so it's how to move in this direction, at what time, in which way. But this is the right direction. That's the feeling that kind of emerged, and I became better at picking up on that. And I think we all have that inside of us when we're young. It's just depending on the parenting and the schooling we get. Some of us lose touch with that feeling. And that's one of the things we work on today in our school system, how to keep that connection very strong. So just to break those things down, first of all, this was around the time that I was turning 40. Financially, I would split my financial journey into two parts. One was working extremely hard, and being very careful, being in a savings mode, because I was really, really keen on being free. That I remember having this feeling of, I don't want to be a 62-year-old giving a presentation to someone, doing some work, and then being told, this is not good enough, and having my life dictated. Even if I was driving a Ferrari, but I had that experience in the office, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather be on a farm somewhere eating, simple food, but have my freedom. So that meant that I was very, very careful. I never, whenever I could, I would never borrow money, to buy depreciating assets. I would borrow money, for example, I invested in real estate very early on, and went the steady path, not the risky investments path, because work was already financially quite lucrative once my career picked up. And so my investments were more conservative, and I really wanted peace of mind investments. By the time I was 40, some things were happening financially which allowed me to have the freedom to break out of the workplace, out of a very lucrative salary job, with big performance incentives as well. So the things that happened was, we owned our own home. We didn't physically own the home because we couldn't buy the one we lived in, but we owned another home that we had invested in back in 2005, and it was fully paid off. So I was using every bit of savings I had whenever I could pay off the mortgage. We didn't have any debt. I never, as soon as I could, and not never, but very rarely, borrowed money and for cars, for example, which is a depreciating asset. So I could have afforded more expensive cars over the years easily, but I never did. I would just, if I had cash, I would buy what I could, or I would just keep them for a long time. And I once calculated that the amount of money I saved on car loans over about 5 or 6 cars in a period of about 10 years was exactly the down payment that I put on a condo many years later. So we were in a position financially where we didn't have to worry about rent. We had enough income, passive income, to pay for your schooling. We had enough. I had a savings account which I had been building up for the kids, for you and your sister, in Canada, which would, God forbid, if something were to happen to me, you would be okay in terms of being able to pay for university and your living expenses until you were able to get a job. And because we had the Canadian passports, we had the privilege of affordable university tuition, so that was also very, very helpful. And so I had the freedom to be able to start taking some risks at that time. So that's on the financial side. And on the psychological side, as things approached, the day, so psychologically something was bothering me, but it was attracting me. The title of global director, that you put that on your CV, it's very different than regional marketing director for the Middle East. I would have been the global director. But I when I did the pros and cons, it was like, but that's what other people think about me. It's how they see my title. These are not things inside of me. And so inside of me matters. And that's the one thing that wasn't ticking. So it felt right to say no. And when the company asked me, what do you want? I said, well, I think you guys know what I want. I don't want to quit the current job. I really like the current job I'm in, but this will be the last one. And when you see it fit, when it's the right time, find someone else, and then I'll be on my way. And so I didn't have control over when that would happen, which did create a bit of anxiety because I couldn't think about that. It wasn't like I'm going to quit in 6 months. So I just carried on with my job, forgot about that. And then one day my boss comes in and says, I have something to tell you. This was like 2 years later or a year and a half later. We've now found someone, and you'll be leaving in 3 months, And so I remember the feeling was this mixture of, okay, there's a bit of anxiety, but this is exhilarating. This is exciting. This is what I wanted. So it felt right, but exciting, like the butterfly effect you have before a really exciting, match. You want to be a soccer player. You've deserved to get to the quarterfinals, whatever it is, but you have butterflies, but not the feeling of like, this sucks or I don't like what I'm doing, that type of feeling, So very manageable. And what did help on the psychological side was to carve out that year. So I knew I would give myself a hard time, being out of a job. I do very well when there's passive income coming in, but when I'm working with X and X is declining every month, no matter how high the X of savings I had, that just psychologically I don't enjoy that, seeing that balance decline. So I did an exercise. I remember I was thinking about which project, what am I going to do, and nothing was apparent yet. I was still in the last few days of my job. And one night, I remember the first weekend when really work, though I had completely handed over everything, so my brain was quite empty. And that's exactly what I meant by you have to sometimes let go of the things that are occupying you, and stuff will emerge. And literally, I had that night, my creative brain was thinking about what, this, that, and I bounced out of bed in the morning. I don't know what time, 5 a.m. maybe. And I was looking for a paper. I wanted to do some calculations of what would it cost if I did nothing. I just had this idea in the morning, in my dream, I guess, of what if I do nothing, and so how expensive would that be? So I found literally an envelope, back of the envelope, did some math. How much would it cost? Where are we today in terms of our savings? How much would we lose? And then I remember thinking, okay, I'm whatever it was, 41 years old. When I was 20, bouncing around jobs, less than $1,000. If you had told me, hey, when you're 41 years old, you're gonna have X or X minus, it was roughly about 150K, to be able to pay for everything. I would have taken the X minus 150K. I never dreamed of these numbers. So these numbers minus that amount was still a dream. So I just said, that's it. I'm doing nothing for a year. And what I meant by nothing was I'm going to carve out a year. Even if no income comes in, I'm okay. And that gave me my own peace of mind that I will not bother myself with an open-ended, okay, it's been 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, etc. And then the last bit was, okay, I've sorted myself out, but I don't live in a bubble. I've got family. Family cares about me. They'll be asking questions. Friends will be asking. So I want to be comfortable, with my story. And in particular, I was interested in my parents. My parents would ask, and they knew. I'm sure I could control them. I'd say, guys, don't ask me. Listen, I'm figuring it out. But then they would just go behind my back and ask my wife, like, how's it going? Did he get a job? And this feeling of like people asking about me and my friends asking, is he okay? Did he get a job? Did he get a job? I didn't want that building up and that stress. So I just said to everyone, I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to become and take a year off. And the joke was, and when you have this anxiety, when you're comfortable, the anxiety around you, I found the best way to deal with it is with humor. Because if you try to rationalize with it, it doesn't work. It's basically saying, I'm scared for you. And so I remember my dad was like, what are you going to do? Your job, and you've left a multinational. This was the dream for him, like big job, big salary, big title. And I said, Dad, I'm going to come and have coffees with you on random Tuesdays at 11 a.m. because now I can, and he would just like, okay, fine, and laugh. And that really was how I would diffuse those questions. And then the last one was, my mom calls me one day and she's like, I have this guy that I've been talking to, and I've been telling him about your plan, this thing of you're taking a year off. And he wants to know, what is your plan? Like, he wants to learn from you so he can do it. And so suddenly I became the expert on how to take sabbaticals, So, so those three things, I would say, gave me the peace of mind, the space to take my time and figure things out. And I did create a lot of space, and I did experiment a lot, and I did spend. It was a big investment in the nursery without having a job, and I had to go back and do some consulting to keep the cash flow going. But those were the things that set me up for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I think you did a great job in not transferring, that stress onto us. I just remember I have this very vivid memory of you. I can't remember if it was you or my mom walking in through our kitchen door, so not the main door, and then you had sat us down, and then you had just explained to us the situation, how you were leaving, and that you were taking a year off, and we were still young, so I didn't know you were doing these entrepreneurship activities on the side. I didn't know what the saving situation was like. So I remember for a week I had this was around the time I was eating this like organic Cocoa Pops like cereal that we would buy from the organic store. And I remember it was like, I had a good sense of numbers and money. I remember it was really expensive, and I'm sure I ate a lot as a kid. I would eat like 2-3 bowls. So I remember for that week, I would like limit myself to 1 bowl. And then, so just a funny story. And then after that, I basically rationalized the fact that, okay, my dad, it's been a week, he's not stressed anymore, so he's managing his finances well. And so I think that was very important, not just for you, but for, me, Faye, and for our mom, that you were comfortable with your situation, so that stress and that anxiety and that risk didn't transfer onto us. Because honestly, after that week, nothing really, it just felt normal. It didn't feel different to when you had a job. I didn't feel like you were more reserved with your finances. So I think you managed it really well, and I think a lot of people can learn from how you approach that difficult situation.
So did you go back to eating 4 or 5 bowls in a
Yeah,
row?
yeah, definitely.
So
I remember.
I, well, it's so you know, I said I love observations. These are exactly the kinds of things that I remember forever. You know, I'll look at an engine of a car, and I'm an engineer, and my brother's great at this. You know, he'll open up the cylinders of his car and order a spare part. I don't know if you saw this joke with high school degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD degree, and then people on YouTube who fix their own stuff using a YouTube video. Like that's the highest level he's there, right? But for me, I'll forget everything he tells me in like a couple of weeks. But when I observe a human behavior, I'll remember it for the rest of my life. And then it's like I use it for putting solutions together and knowledge. So what you just said is great because obviously I didn't know what was going on for you guys. I could have a clue maybe, but the Cocoa Puffs, or it's not Cocoa Puffs, it was probably koala, some organic
Yes,
koala thing, right?
koala crisp.
Koala crisps, right? So that's that. I've now stored that, and that's great. What I do remember from that conversation was telling you guys this summer we're not going to travel because we have to be here to open the school, you know, find the premises, work with the contractors, etc. And we bought a ping pong table so that would help the summer because it's very hot in Dubai, and spending 3 months in the summer pretty much indoors. We used it to get that ping pong table and have some fun with it. So yeah, I think that period wasn't. We managed it very well, but I'm pretty sure later on, you know, especially around before COVID, when we did go through some difficult times, with all the buffers I had built in to the business, because again, I did a very sound financial plan, very risk averse for the business, but COVID came in and we were shut down for about 9 to 10 months. So I'm pretty sure there was some stress at home, but I think it was less than what it would have been if we hadn't put all those buffers in and planned properly.
Yeah, I would say it was more indirect stress. Like it wasn't. I can only speak for me. I don't know about Faye. I mean, I'm sure she was older, so maybe she observed it. I didn't really ever feel like we were in a financially like sticky situation, but I would say I did observe from your stress of, you know, opening the nursery and then having it being like shut down for 10 months. I would say that stress was what was passed down. But yeah, I think this, yeah, go on.
I remember just one last funny story during that period. This is COVID, and the four of us were at home, and basically all together, no one could leave the house for a couple of months with the COVID restrictions. And we had there were a few interactions that were, you know, frustrating, raised voices, etc. And so at one of the meals, I was like, "Okay, guys, let's have a chat." You know, I've noticed where some of us are getting frustrated, maybe because we're all trapped in together. We don't know how long this is gonna be, but let's see if we can do things differently. And I'm the first one to admit that, you know, I get angry and raise my voice, and all of us do. And then you were like, oh, "Excuse me." The three of you do. I don't raise my voice. And I kind of looked at you and I was like, he's right, actually. so
Yeah.
you managed it. You managed it and differently, and were an inspiration in terms of always figuring out a way to deal with stress without losing your temper.
Yeah, I think we can unpack more of that in a future episode. And so yeah, again, thank you so much. I know it's late for you. It's been great hearing. Although of course I know your story, I still learned a lot from it, and I learned a lot new things from this discussion. And there's really a lot that I want to talk about in the future. So I'm excited for future episodes. And yeah, if there's nothing else, I guess from you, that's it for today.
No, thanks. I'm honored to have been a guest on your podcast. It's a privilege.
Of course. Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, thanks, John.